You
This
can
is
put a lot of them for you. We had one that they held up for maybe
When we're on.
You're all set,
The
beautiful.
crowd goes quiet. We're on.
Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Hanover Selectboard meeting of June 6th, would you believe it or not, 2022. We're here tonight to have some fun and do good work for the town. As always, the first order of business is public comment. David?
Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
David, it's fine.
David.
Go ahead.
My name's David Vincelette. I live at 93 Lebanon Street. I've lived there peacefully for 38 years. Well, this town has brought all kinds of issues against me. First, they told me I couldn't live on my land because they didn't zone it for me to live on it. Then they polluted the water. Then they dumped raw sewage in our swimming hole. Never an apology. All the years Julie Griffin has been here, never an apology. 20 years she dumped asphalt waste and coal tar on town roads were washed into the brook, polluted our land, polluted my farm. Never an apology. Even when the state came and found it there, said that they polluted the water. And even when the town backed out of their dumping, illegal dumping of asphalt waste, never an apology. Now, when Dartmouth polluted local lands with animal waste and toxic pollutants that they dumped on a farm nearby that they bought just to hide their pollution, they were found out. And the town manager still had no interest in pursuing against them. They didn't get a traffic ticket. They dumped all kinds of toxics, dead bodies, fetuses, dead animals. No problem. The town manager has allowed this town not only to pollute our water, but when we complained about it, they put a fence around my property and held us hostage for 25 months in violation of federal law, violation of our constitutional rights. Never an apology. Even after Robert Houseman allowed us to be held there for 25 months, and finally came down and opened up our driveway. Never an apology. You all believe you're above the law. You sit under the Dartmouth Baker Tower Library motto, logo, with a Native American had his land stolen from him, polluted with alcohol and drugs. That's your motto. And even 2 or 3 years after Dartmouth took it down because they were embarrassed of it, you still have it. You not only have it here on the wall, you still have it on all your trucks. Your employees wear it on their shirts.
David, could you wrap this up, please? You got 2 minutes.
Excuse me?
You have 2 minutes, please.
You don't give me how much time I get.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
You can kiss my ass. Take as much time as I need. You son of a bitch. You allow this water to be polluted. You stood by in silence. And then when I came here and asked questions, you told me you were going to answer them in writing. You lied to the public. You lied to me. You have never answered a single question I asked you. You are, sir, are a criminal and a liar. And anybody who has the interest can go back on the tapes and see how many times you lied to the public. It's not hard to find out. Nobody cares, I know. I know that nobody cares. But it's not hard to find out. And you can't limit my freedom of expression, my First Amendment right to tell the truth to you.
David, you have 1 more minute.
Good for you. let's count it. Let's see if you can put me off your way for a minute.
I'm not looking for a confrontation, David, but I've given you 5 minutes, and you have one more
You
minute.
haven't given me anything, sir. I pay for my rights here in the United States. I spent 25 years in the military. I don't have to beg you to be able to speak in public. And you're not going to tell me how many minutes I have either. You son of a bitch. Julia Griffin. She's been a good administrator, but she's been a criminal. All of you are criminals. You've all violated my rights, my family's rights, my children's rights. The people who lived down with me at my land were held in violation of law for 25 months, and even after they were freed, you never apologized. And you still don't apologize. Because you think you're above the law, but you're not. You're all criminal, evil fucking bastards.
Any other public comment?
Yes. I'll make this short. Also, Mr. Christie, thank you for the response to the email.
Sure.
Probably something I should have asked for a long time ago, but.
Please introduce yourself. and
My name
your
is Mark Rick, on Dairy Lane. I'm here to speak about the current condition of the Hanover Police Department. I was a former member for over 7 years. And this is a response to my neighbor Peter Bouchard's question during the town meeting last year, the budget meeting, in regards to why the Hanover Police Department was losing so many people. A little background, not much. I spent 21 years in the New York City Police Department before I came up here. I retired from there. I live in Hanover. I've lived in about almost 6 years now. My daughter attended Hanover High School for all 4 years. One of the biggest issues with the Hanover Police Department is retention and recruitment.
So, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
In the microphone, please.
I'm hearing me. Oh,
No, it could be my hearing too.
no, usually it's the opposite, so. Is recruitment and retention go hand in hand with the police department. And over my 7 years there have been approximately 29 officers who have retired or resigned. There's approximately 4 per year. The last year being the worst, where there's 6 officers who have retired, who have resigned. One is currently waiting for their future employer to give them the okay to work there. But what I just want to put into question, not into question, but to highlight is, even over the last year, Julia and Chief Dennis did touch upon Peter's question where there's a nationwide shortage with police, and that's been that way for quite some time. Not when I started in 1993, but it wasn't a very popular job then, at least in New York City. But the issue being is not just pay and benefits, which I will say, the pay and benefits in Hanover are pretty darn good. I certainly wouldn't complain about that. What also can happen with recruitment and retention is leadership, and that's leadership within the Hanover Police Department. And that tip of the spear is Charlie Dennis. Of a perfect example of the issues with recruitment and retention, I just gave you a highlight. There's far more involved in that. But about a year ago, the town, for in-state officers to work for, let's say someone from Lebanon wanted to come work in Hanover, it's a $15,000 signing bonus, and that's still signed. Not one officer applied. All we've had is out-of-state, non-law enforcement officers, so starting from the ground level. And that's, the reason being is because Charlie Dennis is poorly, plain and simple. This is an unfortunate thing that I never wanted to do. I wasn't a boss fighter in New York City in New York City, and I didn't come here to intend to do the same thing. But the word needs to be out there with the public, the viewing public, and the select board. I'm not blaming anyone in town. The town is a very good town to work for. That's not it. But it's all in-house. I would like to get into more specifics, but I know there's more people here, and everyone's had a very long day. And I just want to move it along. Again, with the recruitment, when we're getting okay recruits, we're not retaining people, that affects morale. It's almost like a vicious cycle. So that continues, and that continues to this day. Unfortunately, I feel bad, at least somewhat for Julie, because I did have to get him involved in a lot of stuff that I didn't think she needed to be involved in. I'm not saying it went my way, but it needed to be done. I have certainly more information. I want the select board, and Peter, you have my email, if you'd like me to forward anything. It's not a lot. This was just so I didn't have to bring my glasses, which I brought anyways, but, and I thought 14 font, I should have went to 16 or 18, but my printer could only handle so much. But I think it's imperative to know that with a town like Hanover, to have such a high turnover, with such a, well, to be honest with you, I was speaking with a columnist from the Valley News, and they said it better than I did. Like, this is a place for semi-retirement. There should be experienced officers that can't wait to work here. It's the money and the detail money, fantastic. Job level is very low. But the fact of the matter is, no one wants to work here because of the current chief. It's because of the current chief and his administrative staff. So, like I said, I had a lot to read here, but I think that's more than enough. I thank you for that, but the morale, the past morale and continued morale of the police department is imperative. It's going to continue this downward slope with officers not staying. It's the worst thing for the town, because we pay about $30,000, not counting pay, $30,000 per person going through the academy. And if they don't want to stay, they just go to another department, and the other town wins, and we just continue to lose. So, like I said, Peter, you have my email.
Thank you.
I'm sure you don't want to contact me all the time, but if you put information here, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please introduce yourself.
It's Kari Asmus. I live between Etna and Hanover Center, and I wanted to take this opportunity actually to thank Scout Troop 45 for continuing the Memorial Day tradition of changing the flags at Hanover Center Cemetery. It was, as always, just really nice, poignant time there to honor those who have served and gave their lives. I didn't know that anything was happening, so some of you may have seen, I asked on listserv, and so I happened to hear back from a number of people, and I just wanted to convey to you that there is still a desire and a hope that we will be seeing more of a Memorial Day ceremony coming, hopefully next year when COVID is completely over.
That's the plan.
But it is something that, 100 people showed up for annually, and there's the hope that it will come back, and I just want to pass that along. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, I hereby declare and open a public hearing for consideration and approval of the proposed FY 22-23 rates and fee schedule. Each year, the rates and fees total list goes on for, 20-plus pages, and each year we review changes to those. So there weren't any particular, when I reviewing it, Julie, nothing jumped out as me as particularly controversial, but if you would tell us any trends or any
No.
sticker shock that we should expect.
You'll see in the schedule that's been distributed and published online that the only changes are highlighted in yellow, and that's based strictly on the cost to provide the service. We had one new fee added in the fire department in terms of fire plan review of large projects, in addition to what the Planning and Zoning Department charges for their services, but that's really the only significant change in this entire fee schedule, Peter. Everything else is simply increased by the cost of increased services due to salaries.
Okay. Any public comment on the rates and fee schedule? Questions, Select Board? Pretty straightforward this year. Okay, I've moved the questions. I think, was there a second? I moved it. No, I didn't move anything yet.
No.
I move that we adopt the rates and fee schedule as presented.
I'll second it.
There you go. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. It passes. I know a lot of work goes into this. We just did it in a minute and a half, right?
Right.
But let me tell you, a lot of work goes into the thinking and what the fees should be and what needs to be updated, and there's a lot goes on in preparation of this. And we thank everyone for that. So a preliminary review, finally, of the discussion of the proposed rental, that was not a Freudian slip, rental housing code ordinance.
Rob, come on
Rob,
up.
you want to come up? I think the way I'd like to handle this, Rob, is I've got a few general questions, and I'm sure the board does too. Then I think we almost need to go, we'll have the opportunity to go section by section and ask specific questions.
Excellent.
Does that work for the board? Okay.
Do you want to have Rob give a brief overview of the background?
Sure, that's
Peter?
well, my first, would you give us a brief overview, Rob, of the ordinance, please?
Yes, I'd love, thank you, I'd love to.
Oh, good.
First, I'm Rob Housing, Director of Planning for the town of Hanover. I'm here to speak to the rental housing ordinance. It's been in the works for several months now. It's about 2 years. The challenge, the real challenge was creating an ordinance that applied to a municipality, a town. The existing ordinances and statutes are geared towards cities, and the structure is very different. So working with Laura Spector Morgan, we came up with an ordinance that establishes a rental housing inspection program on a 3-year cycle to ensure that they meet basic code and that we can evaluate them for cleanliness and for occupancy level. The goal here is to have every unit rented in the town of Hanover inspected in that 3-year cycle, 1/3 every year, and the rotation. Those who are repeat offenders would go into an annual inspection program to ensure that those issues are addressed and maintained before they get set back on the 3-year cycle. There are responsibilities for the property owner, there's responsibilities for the tenants, and there's standards for inspection that we develop. Happy to answer any questions or provide more detail on the ordinance itself if you'd like.
A couple of questions. Does this apply to Airbnbs?
Yes.
Yes. So anyone who's renting, or whether it be over a 2-week period or weekend period, or a bedroom in their house,
Yes.
or really in the rental business, they have to, this applies to everyone.
Correct. There's one nuance with regards to renting. If it's an owner-occupied dwelling that's renting a bedroom, the inspection is, there's a single inspection. If, however, it's unoccupied by the owner, it's a 3-year cycle.
Okay. So I don't see this 3-year cycle here.
It's explained in section 4.3.
4.3.
First paragraph, last sentence. Certificate of compliance is issued for a 3-year term.
Okay, thank you.
So, may I ask a question, Peter?
Please.
So, say I convert my garage to an apartment, and can you just walk me through what I would have to do in order to be in compliance with this ordinance?
We'd file an application, we give you a temporary, so the first thing is to file the application and pay the fee.
So that the fee's $50, that's 50,
The application is $50.
Okay.
The inspection is $250 per unit.
okay?
We would give you a temporary certificate until such time that we schedule the inspection. Upon completion of the inspection, who would issue a certificate of compliance if it complied.
Yep.
You would then be obligated to post the certificate of compliance, and the critical issue, access point issues for you would be landlord contact information, occupancy limit on the space, and a telephone number that we could access also for property owner.
So if I have a 1-bedroom or 4-bedroom apartment, it doesn't matter. It's a $50 application fee, and then the town, upon scheduling an appointment to do the inspection, I would then pay you $250 or $350? $250 regardless of the number of beds, or bedrooms. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Very helpful.
And this applies to both long-term and short-term rentals.
Okay.
Council.
And assuming someone's out of compliance, they're on an annual schedule rather than a 3-year schedule?
Correct.
Okay. So in round numbers, we're adding $100 a year, the $250 plus the $50, for a 3-year permit. You're adding $100 a year for someone to rent, okay,
Per unit.
Per unit. Mhm.
per unit.
Yep.
So if I have a
5-unit, that's,
5-unit apartment house, it's,
Each unit will be inspected.
each unit is responsible, so for every living unit per se,
Yes.
it's $300, $100 a year. Okay.
And Rob, would you imagine there's a situation where a particular unit, let's say in the basement near the furnace kind of thing, is out of compliance and needs to be inspected yearly, but the rest of the structure, 3 bedrooms or whatever, might all be in compliance? Is it possible to have different situations within the same building?
Yes.
Okay,
So we have buildings that are condominium,
yes,
and each unit is independent of the others.
Right.
We have units where we have space where, the example you gave, we have those exact conditions where either the landlord or occupant conversions have occurred that weren't permitted, and the goal would be to, 1, ensure that it's fully compliant and permissible, and 2, ensure that we do the check for a 3-year cycle before we put them back. If they're a habitual offender, again, if it comes up the first time, we'd inspect it and do a follow-up inspection, and if it didn't reoccur, we would put them in the habitual offender category, triggering an inspection every year.
So just a follow-on, do you imagine that there's a situation that you inspect and you just say, this is no way for someone to live, and do we have the ability to simply take that unit off the market?
We have that power today. There is a process that we have to follow.
Right.
So if it occurred during our inspection process, we give them, and it was not habitable,
Yes.
we would address that with the owner. We would require them to provide alternative housing for the occupant
Oh, okay.
and correct the deficiencies if they could be corrected in a timely manner. But there is an appeals process that's spelled out in the ordinance.
Thank you.
so we have a number of condominium buildings across town, and some are owner occupied, some of them are rental units. So those would be, they would be impacted by this as well. So Brook Hollow, the Greens, Hampshire Hotel, or Hampshire House. Is that correct, or?
As in sublets, Joanna?
Yeah, but if they're condos,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Absolutely. Any
Okay.
dwelling unit, if it's rented, has to go through the inspection and
Okay.
registration process.
I guess we should point out to the public that the fees generated here pretty much pay for the program,
Right.
plus or minus a few dollars. So the fees are structured to pay for the program, not to make money for the town.
Correct.
And that also pays for someone to actually administer this and make it happen, which is, we've lacked that capability in the past.
That's correct.
Okay.
and the goal is overall to provide safe housing, right?
Safe, code compliant housing for all of our
Right,
Okay.
okay. Other general questions? Bill?
So I have a couple questions. One, I'll go to the math issue. So the math is based on about 350 units. Is that about what the numbers are out
It's
there?
1,000 units.
350 per year.
Per year.
Per year.
So like 1,000 units.
So we have
So it's about 1,000 units.
1,050, yeah.
Correct.
All right. So then, as I read through this, the applicability, which you get to 4.2, where it gets two lines, it says non-owner occupied dwelling unit, rooms rented, and owner occupied dwelling unit. But it takes you a long way to get to that section, where reading through it, I couldn't pick up that it was covering a owner-occupied facility.
We can restructure the ordinance.
So I would just suggest maybe you put that up
Popping it
front,
up the front.
because then that says who's covered, because your wording throughout all the different sections keeps talking about non-occupied owner, just as an observation from a
Okay.
reader.
Okay.
And then under 3.2, you list all the nuisances, which is plenty of them. And then the last paragraph gets into the maximum number of occupants permitted in the occupied, and you're referring back to the Hanover zoning ordinance, which is a separate document. So that's still one per bedroom, unless there's some special approval.
It's maximum of 3 per unit, unless they're grandfathered. Or if it's a 3-bedroom unit on the new main Wheelock district, 6 unrelated persons.
Are you thinking you want to make that
Well-
clear under 3.2?
Well,
No?
I'm, again, those who own buildings and are going to be under this jurisdiction, I'm sure are reading this carefully and know the linked the ordinances, but it's just, when you read it, it's not clear. I mean, so it's a matter of, I don't think you want to put the whole other ordinance listed in here. But I just suggest make sure that it's clear to people, because that's been one of the biggest challenges you've had besides the rundown and challenging situations. I mean, it's the occupancy issue that, and then so therefore, what will happen under this program, if I understand correctly, is that after the certificate is approved, it's posted. And it stays posted. If someone rips it down, then it got to be reposted for $25 or whatever it was.
Right.
So everyone should be clear on what that occupancy should be.
Be spelled out in the certificate.
Yeah, so that's been part of the challenge of, oh, I didn't know that response
Right.
when there's too many beyond an occasional visitor.
So Bill, are you thinking we should reference somewhere more clearly the number of occupants allowed per unit?
The document's long to start with. I'm trying to hesitate to make it longer, but
I think also you need a verb. I mean, all these other things suggest something went wrong. So I think in this particular, you need to say something like exceeding
Okay.
the maximum occupancy, not notice of, but exceeding. It's a grievance paragraph. And what about maximum occupancy? If you exceed maximum occupancy, boom, you've now created a public nuisance under this section, right? So I just think you need a verb or whatever that is to make that clear.
Okay.
And I don't, Bill, it kind of piggybacks a little bit, but
Yep.
maybe exceeding the maximum occupancy per something general.
Yeah.
And we can actually reference the.
Reference something,
the
don't-
section.
The section of the zoning ordinance?
It's section 5.
Yep.
10.
I made a note. Rob, I know you're making notes too, so. Okay. And that's under 3.2
Yes,
public nuisance,
which is
the laundry list.
yeah, you have the laundry list, and then you throw in the
And you see at the very
occupancy
end,
things.
occupancy limits are established. Yep.
Where your first line, just look for a period.
You wanted a
That was
period.
my joke that I had with him on the side. It just proved I read it. That doesn't have to be in the minutes on that.
Okay, thank you. Right.
So I've got some specific questions, but any more general questions? Or,
I thought we got pretty specific.
okay, yeah, that's okay, it works. Okay, so, let's just get really nitty-gritty now. 2.4, 24.1, investigate the dwelling conditions in the municipality. That means town of Hanover?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, maybe we should say town of Hanover. I also said in 2.4.3, 2.4.3, I'm not so sure we want to commit to such manner as to cause the least possible inconvenience. I think that's putting too burden on the town. And reasonable is the word reasonable, but I don't think we want to be in the position of having to create the least possible inconvenience in order to do this work. So I would suggest a little bit of backing away from that language.
There may be some sense Laura has, based on other state statutes, that it's important that we state it in that fashion, Rob. Any,
We'll go back to RSA 48A
yeah,
and make sure that this is not extracted from us.
yeah, it may be direct, and you know how clear the statutes are, Peter, or
And
arcane
again,
the statutes are, right?
Even though that's the statute, I think Peter raises a really good point. Least possible is like, don't, can you put your invisible cloak on and walk in? So, I mean, reasonable.
Yeah,
Let's reasonably not inconvenience anyone.
I just think it's over restrictive.
Okay,
If we can avoid it, we should avoid it.
okay.
2.6, last sentence, it says, "The courts of law or equity shall not be controlling." So I guess my question is, what is controlling?
So this is in the hearing by the department.
Right.
So the steps would be, if we issued a decision that's someone's appeals, we host a hearing by the department. So the courts don't get involved in that.
Okay.
They appeal subsequently to the courts, and that's when the courts would have jurisdiction.
Okay, so,
But we may not need that language.
yeah, I'm just saying, it just seems,
We'll check with Laura.
what is, if it's not controlling, then what is controlling?
It's our rules, right?
Yeah,
That's fine.
it's, what that says is we can run our hearings the way we
Based upon-
choose. We're not
Right.
controlled by court rules.
Maybe we
But
should-
then, if it ends up in appeal, all of that becomes,
then you're
testimony.
then you're in a different venue. at
Yeah.
that point.
Correct, right.
but let's make
I just
it.
think that might be worth
Okay,
stating what we are doing.
okay.
On 2.7, we go into a lot of language about if the owner can't afford something, then this is what they do. I'm not sure we need to even go down that track. I mean, if the owner chooses not to comply, and therefore they have to tear down the dwelling, that's up to them. I don't know why we need language about what the owner can afford to do and not afford to do. It's rippled through that whole paragraph.
yeah, we'll check with Laura.
Check with Laura,
Yeah,
would you please?
yep.
'Cause I don't know why we'd get into that
It-
dialogue at all. Owner needs to comply, if it's not in their economic interest, then they won't. But that's not for us that's for them to decide, right? So I'm just thinking that wording is a little bit unnecessary.
Okay.
Oh, here's a big one. You ready for this? 2.8. He may appeal to the select board. Uh-oh.
They may appeal, yes, thank you.
Okay. And what is the title, the 2.8, appeals from planning and community development orders?
It should say planning, zoning, and codes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it should
So
say-
as in department orders. So
Appeals-
planning, zoning, and code department orders is what it should say.
Okay, so that's.
Planning, comma, zoning, and code department orders.
Yeah, okay, so that'll be corrected.
Yeah.
And then in the third paragraph under 2.8, it says, if the building code of appeals, is that the select board?
Now, the building code of appeals is the zoning board of adjustment in Hanover.
So we need to make that explicit, right?
It's expressed, we already have it, well,
We can reinforce it here,
we
but
can
that's,
reinforce it.
they're statutorily the building code of appeals in Hanover, so.
Right, but shouldn't we say the Hanover Zoning Board of Adjustment here? Or is the
Well,
Hanover?
but they act as the building code of appeals for these kinds of cases. So they're the ZBA, but they're wearing the official statutory building code of appeals board.
Do they know that that's the board they serve on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I've never used that term before.
Now, and it's rare that we use them, but
Okay.
on
I guess
occasion.
I'm still confused then. If there is an appeal, it goes to the select board.
No, goes to the ZBA.
The select board shall hold a public hearing upon the
Upon the
appeal.
appeal.
Due notice of the hearing, blah, blah, blah. The select board may affirm or revoke the order of the department. Or it may notify it in accordance with their, or it may notify, I don't know who it is.
Okay, we need to go through this again.
So it looks like the select board is doing the appeal process.
No, I apologize for that. That's not correct.
Okay.
So it's not the select board, it's the building,
Board of Appeals, we.
right. It's the building, so it's, instead of the select board shall hold a public hearing, it's the building code of appeals, which is the
Doing
Zone-
business as ZBA.
DBA, the ZBA, DBA Building Code of Appeals.
Okay, so
Yeah,
select
so-
board is improper.
Right. So they don't appeal to the select board. All three paragraphs have to be modified, Rob. Yeah.
Okay, so in the next one, it sort of goes on in 2.9, it says, within 30 days after the department, I assume that's your department, has given the appellant notice of its decision, but it's not its decision, right? It's the Building Code of Appeals decision?
No, it's the department. Oh, I'm sorry.
It is.
It is
To
the
the
building,
court.
yes.
Building Code of Appeals.
Okay, so it's not after the department is giving the appellant notice.
So just clarify, it's the building code,
Maybe it's just needs to be the
building code of appeals.
right?
So it's clear who's, yeah.
Okay. All right. We talked about 3.2. Thank you for finding the 3 years in 4.3 for me. Those are my nits.
Okay.
Any other items by the board?
I actually, I don't know if it was you, Peter, or Bill, or whomever, that in terms of the applicability, that's in section 4.
Yeah,
Kind of feels like that should be up front as well.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
we
so
said that,
that's a
Joanna.
change that will be made.
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
wasn't sure if it was just gonna stay in 4 or not, so.
We'll restructure the ordinance and get to a revised draft shortly.
Yeah,
I think it's great that we even have this.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing
Yes.
it to us.
we've only been trying to hatch this egg for about 15 years in Hanover, just so you
I
know. In
Well,
one-
you know, I think it's fitting,
way, shape,
Julia,
or
for
form.
us to take this on today.
Yeah.
Put one, hang in there, Kari's got a, Kari, come on forward, and
Okay.
just in case you need Rob, stay with us, baby.
So good evening again, and I'm here tonight, my name's Kari Asmus, in my capacity as the owner of 212 Brook Hollow, a unit off of Verona that's occupied currently by a family member and by a graduate student who is a tenant. And I have to say, because I've been involved in town affairs for so long, I have actually kind of followed this along through the years. And when we purchased the unit in 2017, I knew there was the rental housing ordinance, and I supported that concept of how you were doing it. I mean, there's a problem. If there was a problem, you went and you looked at the problem, and I appreciate that, Rob said that if you suspect there's a problem, that there's a student sleeping under a stairwell next to a furnace, you can do something about it. So you have the ability to address problems. And the rental unit, the ordinance took it one step further. They asked everybody who has a rental unit to register it with the town. And that felt, a little invasive, but I understood what you were trying to get at. There's this greater community good. So I brought in my little piece of paper, and when I saw this, it's really a major change. And I kind of feel that it doesn't fit as well for all properties. As a condominium owner, I don't own the structure. I don't deliver utilities. I don't deliver water to the unit. The association does. I don't provide garbage cans. I don't have a day. There's a dumpster in the dumpster shed. you know, the idea that we would have these little things displayed outside of everybody's door, so as you're walking around Brook Hollow, you'd say, renter, renter, owner, 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 renter. You know, that's really not what we're trying to create, you know, at Brook Hollow. And again, I support trying to address the problems that different parts of town have, from the very dangerous, inhabitable units that some students find them in, to the issues with overcrowding that some neighbors have. And I have to say, at Brook Hollow, you know, three-bedroom unit, we can have a maximum of 2 unrelated people. And
Condominium rules?
yeah, under the bylaws, and in the 4 years, 5 years that I've been there, we had a board president who went around and asked who's living here, and if they find that you have more than 2 unrelated people, you get fined. And there's only, you know, very limited parking. So, I mean, so, you know, it's just such a different thing, and I think about how now, like, if I bought a unit there, it costs $600 to get your building inspection, and then I have to come and pay the town $300. You know, and for the $600, you get a big report, and they spend hours there, and if somebody came to be, yeah, you have drywall, you have a bathroom, just, you know, so I'm just feeling that this isn't, it sort of feels to me like.
Let me try to address that, Cory, because I've had the same concern. First of all, the problem with the current ordinance is that it's complaint-driven.
I'm sorry.
It's complaint-driven.
The current registration.
Current legislation is complaint-driven, and we've found that it's,
We don't get complaints.
some students are reluctant to complain. So we had to go from a complaint-driven ordinance to an inspection. Way back when, 3 years ago when we started this, I was worried. You know, we needed a ball-peen hammer, not a sledgehammer. Because out there amongst our 1,000, we said, renters, I would bet that there are, I'll just make up numbers now, 900 who don't really need this.
Right.
But I'm afraid we have 100 that do. And the only way we can get at the 100 that do is to have an ordinance that applies to everyone. And we've been around and around to that from a philosophical and legal point of view. And yeah, it's burdensome on those people who really don't need it, but that's the only way we can get at the 100 or so that really do need it, and that's unfortunate.
Well, and so there's the inconvenience, yes, of having yet another inspection. I mean, on an annual basis, somebody comes around and cleans out the lint duct. And if your lint filter has a hole in it, you've got to replace your lint filter. I mean, so yes, I know how inconvenient we kind of get out during one of these inspections, et cetera, that another inspection can be, but there's the cost too. And I have to say, you know, I know landlords who are expecting to make their money when they sell their unit, and I pass along the cost. So I guess the question also is, who should, if this is needed, this broad-based inspection, who is it benefiting? And it's not benefiting the 900 out of the 1,000 tenants. It's benefiting the community as a whole. So if you as a select board feel that this is something that the community as a whole needs, and again, I think that there are some neighborhoods where there are the externalities, where the neighbors would benefit from this, as well as the students who would benefit from it. You know, so maybe we need to pay for it more broadly. But I mean, this idea to me also that we're going to have an employee inspect 900, making up numbers, units over 3 years that don't need to be inspected, isn't there a better way that we should be using that person's time? I do just want to also go to some of the definitions in here, and under the applicability, I mean, I can tell you at Brook Hollow, there are many units that are owned by LLCs, and they're occupied by people who are very close actors in the LLC. So is that unit owner occupied, or is it another owner? Should they be? There's also a lot of trusts where it's beneficiaries, and sometimes it's the people whose name is on the trust, but sometimes it's another family member. Are those owner occupied? Should those also be? So I guess I think that the applicability part is really unclear. You know, Rich and I go on a sabbatic leave for 3 months. Okay, now do I need to come in, and we rent our house, which we've done. Do I need now to come and pay $300 because I'm gone for 3 months and want to let some other college-related people live in the house? You know, to me, there's a lot of things that just aren't clear of who this applies to. I have to say that the statute specifically says that it cannot apply to dwellings used as vacation rental or short-term rental. So that would be something to ask Laura. So Airbnb, no, they're not. If you're following the statute, they're not covered. I mean, and the statute, as Rob said, isn't really geared towards our situation. It's really talking about going after the problem dwellings, and you know, and I'm sure we have them, and I praise you all for grappling with this year after year for how to do it. But I really think that we need to be looking at this, you know, and making sure that we're in compliance with the, you know, the RSA. I have to say, I mean, it does tell you what you grant. It grants powers for fining people. It doesn't grant the power to charge a fee for inspections. And maybe there's another RSA, the 49, that you were working under earlier that would cover that. But I guess I would just, when I think about this also then, sort of on this big legal thing, have other communities put something like this into effect? Have there been any court challenges? And, you know, have the courts given what we're talking about its blessings? Because I see this granting certain powers to the town, and I sort of feel that what we're proposing is exceeding them. And I just would want to make sure that we're on solid ground before moving forward, in addition to all those other things that I said, which...
Corey, can I suggest that you list, you've got several serious concerns. I would suggest if you would list them for us and let us look at them individually to see if we can address them, should address them, and how we might. Would that work for you?
I can try to do that, and in addition to plan a retreat for the Finance Committee next Monday and some other things.
It's up to you, but I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, no, and I would love
Just
to.
the major points that you're trying to bring
Yeah.
up.
Rob, isn't this modeled on the Durham ordinance?
Actually modeled on Nashua and,
Use the microphone, Rob.
sorry, thank you. Nashua and Berlin, New Hampshire.
Yep,
Durham has a very different approach. They use the fire code.
okay,
To do
for their
this,
enforcement,
for their enforcement.
yep,
And they do, for lack of a better term, they count heads and beds,
right,
occupancy load.
right, okay.
The issue of short-term rental versus rental, the goal here, as you know, is to adopt an ordinance so that the short-term rental zoning ordinance can take effect.
Right.
And council has advised us that we can't discriminate. We have to treat all rentals the same.
Correct.
And council has developed this ordinance in such a way that she believes it meets the statutory requirements of an inspection program. So there's two parts to it. One is the long-term rental housing stock that we have. And the second part is to permit and regulate the short-term rental housing that there has been a push to have in this community, which this ordinance, once adopted, would allow that process to kick off.
That's the relationship.
And just, may I ask you, I guess it also crossed my mind that the current ordinance specifically exempted sororities, fraternities, Dartmouth, other long-term care facilities, and I didn't know whether that had been researched for this as well.
Student residences are exempt.
Correct.
So fraternities, sororities, and dormitories are exempt. All other dwelling units are not exempted from rental,
And
regardless of ownership, except for state-owned, county-owned, and town-owned housing.
one of the key pieces of this, Kari, is that the college has a very comprehensive quarterly inspection system for all student residences. So they're very much on, and that includes sororities and fraternities. So they're very much on top of the units that are on campus or that are affiliated with the college.
And again, I don't think it'd be a great use of any
Right.
town staff's time to go from dormitory to
Right.
dormitory.
Right.
I just, again, that's not clear here, whether they're covered or not.
Okay.
So
Any
thank
other,
you, I kind of went on there.
any other public comment on this ordinance, this potential ordinance? Board, you have, so what's our next step here, Julia?
So, you've given us some comments, which Rob can work on with me and with Laura. You can set this down for a public hearing at your next meeting or at some future meeting date. We just need to finalize the copy based on the input we've received and then publish it so that the community has a chance to review it. This was in the packet that was up on the town website, but we'll make sure we get it posted as a proposed ordinance for consideration.
Or do you think we need to see it one more time before we
Yes.
take it to public hearing?
Yeah.
I do too.
Okay, so we
So
bring it back to
bring
you
it
on the
back.
20th?
Yeah.
Okay,
We will.
Okay.
And then-
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so the plan is we'll make these changes or whatever, update it, and we'll look at it again at our next meeting.
bring revisions to you on the
And
20th.
then we'll schedule the public hearings to go
Okay.
from there.
And I think it also would be helpful to address some of the concerns that Carrie raised
Yeah,
in terms of,
particularly
is
who it
it-
applies to. Just make
yeah,
sure we
Brook
really cover our
Hollow, is it
numbers on all of
Kendall, Greens, you know, there's a whole bunch of condos in town here and they're all over actually.
those. Okay, so we're finished with that. The next order of business is a presentation regarding reduction of speed limits to 25 miles per hour on the town-owned network.
Check out that logo, you guys,
Woo, woo.
on our packet.
I love your statistics on who's speeding.
Yeah, the police did that, I didn't do that.
It was kind of what, kind of,
If anybody wants to follow along, I'll have to talk.
Thank you, Jenny.
These are pretty good. If you like one. There you go. This is what was on the line in front of Kathy.
No, this is modified.
Short presentation for today. I could read the whole other.
It's the warm-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
I shake it.
Okay, I'm Jenny Chamberlain. Very nice to see you all. Thanks for having me. I'm here representing Hanover Bike Walk. Which, and Hanover Bike Walk, for those who don't know, is an advisory committee. We take input from the community, an advisory committee for the town. We take input and we advocate for better walking and biking environments, recognizing that it's critical for equity, sustainability, health and well-being, and economic prosperity. So today, I'm here to talk about like a 25-mile-an-hour default speed limit within the urban compact, and why this is a critical step for safe streets for all. And I know you all have a thicker packet, a lot of nice speed detail. Thank you, Captain Martin, among others. So today I just really want to point out three main things. And one is that this is super effective, it's really easy, and it's also scalable. So what I mean by effective is it's going to benefit all of our road users, and primarily because when you create a zone, as over 60 towns and cities now have done in Massachusetts, usually the entire city or town. But when you create a zone, people have found that speeds go down, and specifically speeding, exceeding the speed limit, also goes down. And in particular, excessive speeding, like you might have noticed, like some over 50 miles an hour on College and Wheel Up,
in Captain Martin's speed statistics, that kind of behavior goes down. People have also found dramatic reductions in crashes, in severe crashes, and also in frequency of crashes. I'll answer any questions you have about this. People find that it helps creating a culture of mutual respect, like an understanding when you have a lot of people and a lot of conflict areas, like we do downtown, that this is a place where you drive cautiously. And it clarifies enforcement. And I think Chief Mello from Lebanon put this really well. It's like not the only tool in the toolbox, but it's a critical tool. And he said when you see somebody going 40 miles an hour in a residential street, it's very easy now to give them a ticket, even if there's not a speed sign around, because everybody knows they're supposed to be going 25. So you eliminate a lot of the gray area, or whether it's enforceable, because something within like 5 miles of the speed limit is harder to hold up in court. And it just gives you that clarity. Okay, it's easy because it's actionable now. It does not require extra enforcement, and that's something that has been really exciting to read about, how in various slow zones in Seattle, they've seen reductions in speed and speeding with no increased enforcement. When Boston implemented a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in the whole city, they saw a 30% reduction in speeding with no overt increased enforcement. They did do publicity. That might be part of it. And what it takes are 5 signs announcing on the entrance to the compact that this, wherever, here's the sign. Thank you, Rob and Peter. If you have this sign at each of the 5 entrances, then people know anywhere you don't see a posted speed limit, the default is now 25. And it's kind of a strong announcement of our values. And the last is that it's within our town authority. Within the town compact, if we do our engineering studies and speed studies, as the police have done, then we have the authority to create our own speed zone. But it does beg the question that if we do like this, we can consider the urban compact as a pilot, and looking at some of the other densely populated or thickly settled areas is what they call it in Massachusetts, and think about whether or not we want to expand it if it does work out well for us. So I want to leave you with the recap. But basically, this is a way to create safe speeds within the urban compact. Not a magic bullet, but it's a critical piece of this puzzle. Kind of goes hand in hand with designing streets that are self-enforcing, and like we've done with like our roundabouts and the little island off in front of the inn. And it's a really nice opportunity just because it is effective, easy, and scalable. And the benefits we're hoping to reap are a reduction in crash frequency and severity, which would reduce our strain on our emergency services, will help us promote walking and biking, and all the goodness that engenders. And then it'll also make us more competitive for some of the Safe Streets for All grants that have just been announced on a federal level, and it's giving away $5 billion for towns that embrace Safe Streets for All. And this would be a nice big signal that we're on board with that. I imagine you may have some questions about how this would work.
Phil?
I applaud your efforts. I agree with you. It's not the issue except one spot.
Yeah.
That when you define the urban compact, you're coming down from Kendall, and you go around the circle by the co-op. From that point on, currently it's 35 miles an hour. And to drop it down to 25 on such a wide straightaway, I think is just asking for a lot of people to get I don't see how it fits there. Where I see it fits so many other places outside the urban compact, you know, like out in Etna and all that. So I just question that spot as a reality of what is reasonable speed. And, you know, if it was 30, it would make sense, because right now I think it's posted at 35. And I'd slow it down to 30, be my quick reaction. But 25, I feel like that's a long way to go, 25, and if there's a police officer out there, I think they're gonna run out of tickets.
It's a mile, Bill.
Yeah.
It's
Can
a
I-
mile
can I-
to go 20.
So it's just, that's
Can I
just an
piggyback on that?
observation on
My understanding is that if it was a posted road at 35, 25 would not apply.
Exactly.
But, no, but my understanding of the proposal is that the sign of 25, unless posted, but your intent would be to make that stretch 25.
Right.
If it were up to me personally, I would love for that stretch to be 25, and I could bend your ear on why.
Yeah, I understand.
I would say this proposal is about creating a default speed limit
Right.
wherever it's not posted. So one of those roads is College Street. A lot of those roads are residential neighborhood streets, like Low and Rayton. We actually treat them as though the speed limit is 25, but the lowest, unless you create your own speed zone, the lowest default speed zone in New Hampshire is 30 miles per hour in residential streets, unless, and this is something I think we're all familiar with, this is school zone.
Yeah.
This is basically like saying, okay, not just this one stretch in front of the school, but where we have, you know, Hanover is what, 15 square miles? But within 5 square miles, we have more than 75% of the population. We're saying within this area, people should drive slowly, and we're gonna announce that on the entry. And if you don't see a speed limit, you know it's 25 miles an hour.
So which, I think what Jenny's saying.
So you
was-
could leave it at, you could do it at 30 there if you wanted, if we wanted to.
Right.
Versus
She would love
35.
Yeah, if you wanted, you could also, it's interesting, that stretch, because you're gonna get stopped at the light. I don't know if you know this, but.
Yeah.
They've done, when you drive through thickly settled areas like this, you tend not to gain much speed.
I understand.
Either in rush hour or, where people cross.
Yeah, I agree with you. But the other observation I'll just pass on, which I didn't, because of this topic, I just happened to be driving down that road, so I was paying attention. It's 35, but the next sign you see, there is no other sign when you go into the college. So last sign you see, it says 35. Just an observation. There's no place that says, slow down, you're in a college, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, just the signage, well, my point is the signage needs updating, that's for sure.
Or we have also observed that we have a lot of signs here. There's some of us who feel there might be too many signs, a little bit of sign pollution, and this would be a way to get rid of.
Peter like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it might be
no.
a way to get rid of some of our signs,
No,
right?
I agree with you there
Yeah.
too. It's just,
We can take them all down and just start over.
yeah.
Nancy.
I'm with you.
Jenny, my question was, we had a map in our, and what I didn't find that helpful in terms of, what I would really like to know is what streets are. I have no sense of what our urban compact is, obviously, I live in the middle of it, but I would really, really like to have had those streets that bound it labeled clearly. It wasn't.
Right, I think it's in the description above what time, but let me
That's,
go
you
through
know,
it.
it's much better putting it on. the
Yeah,
map.
so this is, Hanover, Big Hanover.
Yep,
This is our compact, this little bit right here.
Great.
This little bit right here.
yep,
So, as Bill was suggesting, coming in from the north,
right,
just under Kendall,
yeah.
that's our town compact, right before you hit the roundabout,
So-
online.
I want to know that on
Yeah.
a map.
You should. You're on the planning board, Nancy.
There's a green dot, but I can recreate that
Okay, I
map
know.
with the link.
Yep.
Thank you very much for correcting me. Thank you
Sorry,
very much.
sorry.
Great,
I
know.
apologize.
Not a worry. You
So
sound like
okay, in terms of process here, what is, I think this makes a lot of common sense. I have a hard time envisioning who would object. My other question is, who's gonna object?
A lot of people.
Really?
A lot of people.
A lot of people would want to go more than 25 on the residential areas?
Every single person with an out-of-state plate is going to be
Vermonters.
tailgating us in an obnoxious fashion.
Well,
Get
no,
our
we're
police
wait a
chief,
minute.
our
We're not
captain
changing any
here.
speed limits at this point. We're just saying if it's not marked, it's 25, right? So that's mostly the residential roads, mostly, right? So you're arguing that people are gonna object to going 25 miles an hour on,
Peter, can you come
Low
up and
road?
answer these questions about speeds? Because this would be helpful to the board in terms of what's marked what.
So yeah, the main roads do have
Who are you?
signs.
Who are you, Mike?
People back in their golf course.
Thank you.
None of the side streets, typically there may be a few that have signs, as is some places where people have to be reminded, but by and large, the side streets don't. Main thoroughfares do, and partly because some of those are state routes. And that's, there's certainly some requirements that we have to live by, because of being state routes, but certainly not neighborhoods. Those are things that we can control speeds.
and you're suggesting, Ethel, that people would object to
Well,
25 miles per hour on Low Road or whatever?
Not on Low Road and not, yeah, absolutely not. I think Bill's example is probably the prime example. I would have to look at the map and think of other ones, but that mile stretch, people will object to that. I'm trying to think of other roads.
But we're not changing that tonight. We're not even,
We're not
there
changing,
no discussion about changing that.
we're not doing anything tonight, are we?
I don't know, that's
This
my
is-
next
says-
question, but even this proposal doesn't change that. We're not
What the proposal is saying is that within the urban compact area, the speed limit is 25 miles per hour unless posted differently.
Right.
So that does include, the urban compact, just for folks who don't know, starts at the bottom of South Main Street, just north of Brook Road. It extends up to just beyond the
Kendall.
small roundabout, just as you get to Kendall.
Just before
It
you-
extends out to the end of Greensboro Road, and it extends down to West Wheelock. So that's essentially our urban compact.
And up to Grass Road.
And up to Grass Road, correct, on Trescott. And so, for the, what Peter has said is for our side roads, we don't currently post speeds typically, but theoretically, it is more difficult to go over 25 miles per hour on a neighborhood street because it's fairly narrow and winding. And then you've got streets like East and West Wheelock, Main Street,
Rip Road.
College Street, North and South Park, Lebanon Street, Lime Road. Unless we post otherwise, that those are 30 or 35, the enforceable speed limit would be 25, except on state routes where we've got some limitations. So that's what the Bike Walk Committee is looking for, is some support from the board for us to change the signage at the entrance points to town to essentially, as Peter and Rob have designed, post a sign that says speed limit 25 unless otherwise posted.
It's not really change the signage, it's create the sign.
It's create the signs, correct,
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's doing nothing to posted roads at this point in time.
correct.
Okay.
But if it were up to Jenny, she would change.
If we're up to Jenny, she'd have us.
And the Bike Walk Committee, I might add.
Yeah, and
But
we,
it's a different, that's a different
That's,
subject.
that's phase two.
Phase two.
That would have to go through the same engineering study that was done in the side roads to make sure, is it legitimately able to lower based on all the sight distances, speeds, pedestrians crossing, so there's a lot of things you have to look at. It falls, I mean, you look at the data for the neighborhood streets, it says there should be 25, just basically what you find. Yeah, there's some stretches of some of the main thoroughfares in town where you have a hard time going to 30. I mean, that stretch of line road may be difficult, but certainly other stretches you could.
Okay. So what are you looking for from us tonight?
I think we're looking for support from the board for the concept, and we're gonna start working on some signage along the lines of what you've got in your packets that Jenny just handed
It's
out,
5 signs.
to greet the community at the,
Right.
It would be great if we adopted this though, right?
I think the
Right.
idea is that we adopt an ordinance, that is amend the ordinance, and I included a draft for your review, that's modeled off of what Lebanon adopted 2 years ago.
right.
That establishes a kind
Yes,
of.
It's like on page 3.
Yeah, it's page 3. It's a very, very straightforward,
Amendment to number 7.
Hi, I have a question about state roads, 10 and 120 and so forth. We don't have jurisdiction over them for this going down to 25?
What we do, we have to do an engineering study on those sketches to verify that it can be used. Certainly, like for instance, South Main Street from Wheelock to top of the hill.
To the
That's
top
an
of the
easy
hill,
one.
top of the hill, you mean the top
Going
where the
down, going South
cemetery
Main
is?
Street, going south.
South, and then going, by top of the hill, you mean going to the cemetery?
Going towards the cemetery, yes. So
Okay.
we control it to just before we get to Brook Road. We can put us, based on the data, we have to actually do some additional studies to see if we
Okay.
can lower it.
Okay.
This is not gonna change necessarily anything at this point, it just says wherever we don't, it's 25. We'll have to look at these stretches and say, okay, maybe there's some stretches that we can lower, some we can't.
Okay.
And that's what the engineering study shows us, is that, yes, there's some legitimate areas with the safety issues where 25 is a safer speed, or other areas, well, it has very little impact, based on the engineering criteria, but that's what we have to look at in those stretches. So it's just really looking at Lime Road, looking at East and West Wheelock, and looking at South Main, Park Street, Lebanon Street, those sections that connect to state routes. Any place else within town, the board has jurisdiction over. As long as we follow the engineering standards saying we're gonna make sure that it meets all the criteria, which we have. So it's a matter of question about looking at those specific areas if we ever wanted to change those speeds. This proposal just says, let's start with the simple things. We can argue about the details of those other locations, those may bog us down. In fact, we spent all day talking about Lime Road, we won't do anything. Because there's definitely some difference of opinion there. But there's certainly consensus between the police department, public works, bike walk, that this neighborhood streets should be 25. Those function as a 25-mile road. They should be assumed to be, it should be enforceable to that speed.
So I'm struck by the fact that we are pledging ourselves also to a real education process.
Correct.
Including, every single school, every single construction site where we have vehicles, making it difficult for citizens who are going 25 miles an hour and so forth. To the Valley News, to let people in adjoining towns across the river know that this is going to be, in addition to these, these great signs that you have, I think it really requires an education process.
I think it's interesting, a number of years ago, we had extended conversations on Rip Road about should there be lines or should there not be lines? Should there be a sidewalk, should there not? And we were, at the time, because it was a 30-mile-an-hour, we couldn't have a street that was 25. Remember, we went back and forth on this whole thing, and whether we could have lines or no lines, and fortunately, there's never been lines since that discussion. Ran out of paint or whatever, but it makes a huge difference not having lines on that road because people have to go slower. People do go slower on that road, and I think this is awesome.
Peter can probably speak to this more, but there are a number of engineering options for various traffic calming if a neighborhood street does need more traffic calming that open up just by lowering the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. Because when you design for like the speed that you want, rather than continue whatever your road design speed is, you can design your neighborhood to be more what you want it to be. Like the engineering standards change for how wide the road has to be, and there's a really direct correlation between how wide the road is and how fast people drive it. So literally every 3 feet, you change it, people drive like 9 miles an hour slower.
Yeah. Okay, I'm hearing a general consensus that we support this approach, and a bit of a warning. Kari, please.
Thank you. Yes, so now I'm back wearing my kind of Etna Hanover Center hat, even though I really support what's going on in town, because as you all heard, I'm now going to spend my dotage off of Verona Avenue. So we need those things there. But I know that Juliet has heard multiple times from people in the Etna Road, Greensboro section, where nothing can be done. And then further up in the curves where I am, up to Hanover Center at the parade ground, and there was this very, nice summary of a traffic study there that showed, yes, somebody did go 74 miles per hour, and last summer in particular, including Karen Chamberlain, we tried to get a little bit of momentum for what can we do in that part of town. Safety for all does resonate. And I can say that one of the things that concerns us, though, is that even if it doesn't change things a lot in town, really, in terms of speed along the stretch, where Bill was referring, if people have the perception that going through town is going to be even more onerous, that means places like Hanover Center Road and Etna Road become more
Shortcuts.
attractive to go to. And it's not just a matter of speed, which we have plenty of speed, it's also a matter of the number of cars. So even though there was a talk of scaling up, I think that given, the number of resources that are understandably spent in town for pedestrians and bicyclists, that, if you're going to try this in town, if there could also be one Dogford, Upper Dogford to Lower Dogford, so that there's the equality of saying, okay, I'm going to have to go 25 if I'm out in the country, or I'm going to have to go 25 if I'm in town. But if you do it one place and not the other, that's just, not feeling quite right. Speaking now as a bicyclist, so I will say another place it's very difficult to go 30 miles per hour is down that East Wheelock. It's also difficult in a car. I mean, you have to ride your brakes all the time to get down to 30, and if I have to go down to 25, and then I'm trying to signal that I want to turn right on Rip Road, that's just, it's difficult enough in the car, and it's much worse.
On East Wheelock?
On East Wheelock.
On the downhill section.
Okay.
And then going out of town, it's really nice to go as fast as you can down that hill, so that when you start going up East
Okay,
Wheelock.
Kari's given us phase 3 to think about. Okay, tonight we're working on phase 1, and I hear general support for this 25-mile-an-hour concept. Is that correct?
Well, I
So
hope
what-
that it could be modified, is my bottom line.
Well, we're going to do it first in town. If the board, this is suggesting that we do it in the compact, and that's phase 1. And if there's phase 2 and phase 3, we will deal with it. So what do you need to do what do you need from us to make this official for the
I'll move
compact?
that we approve, we set a hearing to amend the ordinance number 7 to have our speed limit in the urban compact area posted at 25 unless otherwise posted.
So essentially, what we would do is bring to you an amendment to ordinance number 7 that mirrors what Lebanon has adopted.
Okay, and you need a public hearing on that?
We do, because you're amending an ordinance. Yep.
So you need to bring the ordinance to us, unless we have it here. Is this close enough?
No, because you need to notice this, Peter. So we need to notice this for a public hearing, and what we would do is post ordinance 7 with the revised component, this
Okay.
component.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
May we do it as soon as the next meeting?
Yeah, if the board wants to set this down for a public hearing for June 20th, add that to your motion and we will get it to you.
I'll add that to my motion. June 20th, public hearing for the two.
Okay. All, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we will have it go on step 1.
Good call.
Okay, we're moving right along.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Pete. We didn't even get to hear from the captain.
I'm gonna make the next items, I'm gonna make a motion, so they get on the table, maybe someone will second them. But I move to adopt finance and accounting manager job title, labor grade 19.
Second.
Julia, you wanna bring us up to speed on this one?
Yeah, so this is currently the position is accounting coordinator, and Pat Kudermarsh retired a week ago Friday. With her retirement, Tina and I have worked with Dave Stewart to just modify the job description to provide a little bit more of the finance and budget support and a little less of the components Pat previously performed, which was on the treasurer side. So it's the same labor grade, it's just a difference in job title.
Any questions, board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Great.
Again, I move that we adopt a deputy town clerk job title, labor grade 11.
And the good old, the saga of the town clerk in a town in New Hampshire, which really wants to be a city and have a city clerk, but we can't. And so we are, if you recall, in the budget which the board adopted and town meeting approved, we added some funds, it was 15,000, to look to procure a deputy town clerk. And to restructure one of the two positions that are the front office positions downstairs in the Administrative Services Department. We're opting to go with creating a part-time deputy town clerk position. Currently, Rob Hausman has stepped into the breach because we need that person to be a town resident. This is a 12 to 15 hour a week position maximum. I wouldn't be surprised if we get applicants that they would want to work fewer hours, so we're going to have to adjust to what the market generates for us because this individual is going to have to be a town resident. My ultimate fantasy is that we find somebody who is currently one of our stalwart election volunteers, who's already familiar with the elections process, who's willing to step up and be available in town hall 10 hours a week. 15 hours a week, 12, whatever their schedule would allow, so that we have a physically present town clerk in this building for the sorts of things that town clerks only, or deputies, can sign on to, certify, whatever. And so that's the goal with this position. This deputy town clerk position is very similar to the previous position we had when we had somebody acting in this role, but all we did was do a review of the job description, tweak it a little bit, and assign a labor grade.
Questions, board?
The town clerk is a voted position, right?
Yes, the town clerk is elected, the
An
deputy
elected
town clerk
official.
is not.
Is the elected town clerk, is that a paid position?
It is in some communities and not in others.
In Hanover?
No.
It's not paid?
No,
So the
so the-
deputy town clerk is like the person who has to be here. The town clerk is more of a figurehead position, but is responsible for,
Right, and
ultimately
has
for the
received
elections.
training, right.
right.
And there's a history.
But she doesn't get any kind of salary?
No, she does not. She's provided some funding support when he or she works the election, an hourly rate, just as our supervisors of the checklist
Right.
and our ballot clerks can be, but generally they're not on salary. But the deputy town clerk position is the kind of position that we're looking to have resident in this building on a part-time basis.
And as the town clerk has to, there's certain days a year that they have to be here to accept things. And if
Correct.
they're not here as
Deputy
a
can do
volunteer, the deputy can do that.
Correct.
And that's kind of the situation where Rob is stepping in now.
Yeah, for example, with filing for state elections that began on June 1st, the town clerk or the deputy need to be available to certify those filings.
Okay.
Because our current town clerk was gonna be out of town for part of that period. We needed to quickly snag a deputy town clerk who was going to be here for certification.
Thank you.
Question?
Well, I'll just make my comment. I support the decision. I just don't understand, which is not the first thing I don't understand in New Hampshire, why a town can't get the state legislature to just agree to some simple little thing like this. So I encourage us to reach out to our legislation reps once again, maybe, and put it on the list for next year. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, oh, Bill, we've been at this so many
So I-
times, yep.
So there must be some rationale why not to do it, but I'm not aware of it, so.
There may be an opportunity, the primary impediment for many, many years was a combination of the Town Clerks Association and the former Secretary of State for New Hampshire.
Now with the new Secretary of State, Dave Scanlon, who worked very closely with former Secretary of State Bill Gardner, but is his own person, we may have more luck, we meaning NHMA, in getting the legislature to change their minds, but it's a fascinating,
I just encourage us to take another shot at it,
Yeah.
that's all.
Someone sitting in this room who's just heard you, so that's good.
I thought maybe our new town manager might put it on the list.
Okay, any further discussion on this?
Number 432 to get to.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
The viewing public should know that we did receive write-ups of each of these changes to review before tonight's meeting, so it's not new to us, to me. So I think the next one is 7, I believe.
it's item number
8.
7, yes.
We did 7?
7, no, 7, 7.
We have to do 7, right?
You have to do
Yes, so I
7.
move that we adopt the field appraiser to job title labor grade 17.
Second.
Norm's here to answer any questions, but we sadly, Adrian, who worked with us for 2 years, who did a superb job as our field appraiser, had an opportunity to relocate to the Londonderry area and took that opportunity with family. And so this is a reworked job description and job title as Norm begins to try and recruit that next individual to replace her.
Norm, this seems like an uptick from our current structure.
Norm, come on up and speak into the microphone, so.
Looks like we're definitely trying to hire someone who will.
The immediate need, when we first created the position of Field Appraiser 1, was to get someone in here to do the data collection and at that time save money from the revaluation contract, and we wanted to do it in-house to have better control over that, and have a more personal touch on what was going on. Adrian was at this level, Field Appraiser 2, and the idea is to bring whoever is here at a level to replace me at a future time. So in order to do the work, you have to have different certifications at the Department of Revenue. The Field Appraiser 1, the biggest criteria was being certified as a measure enlisted. Field Appraiser 2, you have to be an assistant assessor level. And then the next level above that is assessor. So it's education, it's coursework, and it's time. It's years of experience that in appraising various properties and actually performing certain tasks. And then there's the ability at my level to do the whole project, to be able to just run a whole project and supervise all.
But this recommendation is to upgrade from 1 to a 2.
Correct.
Well, yeah, we would still have the one position.
Right.
So this gives me a little more flexibility in hiring.
We still have a job title for assessor, for appraiser 1, and this is just adding a second,
Hiring 1 person or 2 people?
1 person.
1 person that could either fill the 1 or the 2.
Right.
If you find a person qualified for 2.
Yeah,
Not gonna be easy.
yeah. And so, everyone in our business, which is sort of a specialty, it's sort of a niche business, is having trouble hiring people. So, we need this person and I have to, continue with the succession plan, and it's either 1 or 2, or whatever I can get, that I can train, like I did with Adrian. It's unfortunate, but personal circumstances, it's not here.
I've never seen you quite as down as I saw you when you told me that you
Yeah.
had left.
She was
Yeah.
fabulous. We were very sad that her
Yeah.
personal situation necessitated a move, but
Yep.
she was great.
Okay, so we'll start again.
Yep.
So any other questions, board?
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Is no further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It passes.
Priming for you, John. Have a good night.
Good night.
See you soon.
And for the next and last position, which is the Events and Media Program Manager, job title, labor grade 14,
I attached
Well, we have to
John's,
have that resolution.
I move
oh, sorry.
that we adopt Events and Media Program Manager job title, labor grade 14.
Thank you, Peter. So
Do we have a second?
Athos seconded.
Julia, you're on.
I attached because it was such an excellent sort of play-by-play
It
of
was amazing.
what John and Liz were contemplating. I attached John's memo to me, which started with brace yourself, which
Yeah,
I
I
thought.
love that opening line. Brace yourself.
So John, I don't know if you want to come up, but they figured out a way to as the department sort of pivots to cannibalize two positions, one which was the previous administrative assistant position, and the other which is the part-time senior center coordinator, to create this position. And I don't know that you need John to go through it again, but his memo did a nice job of sort of outlining the game plan.
Why don't you tell the public where we end up?
So what this basically does is takes the senior program manager and the administrative assistant positions, combines them, and we come out with one position, which would be this new position I'm proposing. It would be a savings of right around $35,000 thereabouts, which we would put towards the new program software. And that new program software is about $35,000 in year one to get into it. It's the same system that the town's moving towards, the Civic Plus software, so it's all going to be integrated into the same thing. Right now, we have our own website that's separate from the town's for our registration software. So it brings everything into one umbrella, and it's a huge improvement as well. So in the end, after the first year, we have significant savings because we're not going to have that big year one investment into the program. So that's the whole thing in a nutshell.
Good, and I think by memories, we have budgeted the software as a part of our annual budget.
So we budgeted the town's website overhaul, Civic Plus, but we did not budget this component, Peter, for recreation. The way this played out is that Corey Stevens had a chance to get a demo of the recreation department component, which is an additional expense. And he said, wow, this is much more robust than what we currently use in the recreation department for all program registrations, which is called MyRec. He then got John and Liz together with Civic Plus and said, you guys need to see this, because from Corey's perspective, he thought it might significantly reduce the work that the administrative assistant does.
So what bucket does it come out?
So it would be funded from the payroll bucket,
Okay,
in that there'd be some savings from the consolidation of the two positions, and the combination of consolidating the two positions, there's enough savings to almost fully fund the software add-on. So, and given the kind of swing they have in their budget with savings from job vacancies, John has identified that I think there's a gap of $4,588. He's not gonna have any trouble making that because of vacancies that occur during the year.
in general, I think the town does a good job of reviewing staffing when we lose key people or have openings. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this software really enables us to streamline so much of what we're doing that, like Julia said, that administrative assistant position. With COVID, everybody got used to doing everything online with registering and all that. So even as we came out of COVID, we're not getting a huge influx of people coming in anymore. We've streamlined everything, put it online, so there's really not a whole reason, unless you want that in-person experience, you don't have to come in to register for a program, reserve a facility. You can do all of that online, so we really streamlined everything, so.
Okay,
And this
excellent.
new software takes that to a next level when we implement that.
Okay, any questions, board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Well,
thank
well
you.
done, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
What was the name of the old software? Trainwreck?
MyRec.
Oh, MyRec. I could have sworn you said Trainwreck.
It's a great program.
It is a great
You've sold it, you don't, as
No,
a salesman, you stop selling now.
I was gonna say, MyRec is a great program.
MyRec.
I liked going with them for so long because they were local out of
Okay,
Vermont.
so they were not a train wreck.
So, no, they're
No,
not.
no. I don't wanna get sued for something.
No, no.
Okay, we're up to 9. I move we accept the donation for the Etna Library. Thank you very much from Eric and Susan Shirley in the amount of $100.
So second?
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank you to the Shirleys.
Eric and Susan. Minutes of May 2nd. Whoops, there's more than one set of minutes. Did
I only
miss
have May 16th. I didn't get May 2nd.
I only got
We-
one. I only got one set, I think.
Because we, remember I
So
made
you're
a
waiting,
fuss?
you're still waiting, so just so you know, I'm still working on the May 2nd minutes. I haven't had a minute to tackle them. This is because Joanna wanted me to add some enhancements. And I have to do your May 31st minutes, which are all of about 3 lines.
Okay.
Because that was when
Oh,
you came
that
together
was
to
the one.
appoint a deputy.
So we're
town
dealing
clerk.
with May 16th.
So you're
at
just
the
dealing
moment.
with May 16th this evening.
I looked at them and saw no additions or corrections. Any additions, corrections to May 16th? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. Julia, how many administrative reports do you have left in you? 2?
Right.
Oh, boy.
Right, so I am, we're gearing up for year end, at year end fiscal year, so it's a busy time for us as we look to close out one budget and get ready to open another. So it's, there is always a significant amount of just sort of cleanup work that happens between town meeting and the end of June. So we're busy with that. We're also busy working on implementation schedules for projects in a time period where we have trouble getting materials, and we have a hard time finding contractors. So as I think I shared with you at our last minute, things are very much up in the air in terms of what we're gonna be able to complete this summer, given the supply chain and labor chain shortages. On top of that, I am currently reading through 26 years of files, and having a daily walk down memory lane as I do that, so that poor Alex doesn't arrive to 26 years of files he will never need, while making sure to maintain what we need to maintain in terms of the record. So it's, I'm trying to set aside a couple of hours each day to work and put together briefing material for Alex as he transitions in. So it's very busy. I'm also in the process of trying to fend off all sorts of people who are attempting to pick my brain before I retire. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is reaching out to me to say, can I have you for 20 minutes to help us brainstorm this? Or how would we, so there's a fair amount of people just trying to tap my input for one more time before I'm done, which is challenging to figure out what I have time to do and what I don't, but that's a daily challenge. So it's super busy as we do a heave-ho with a lot of stuff and reorient and summarize 26 years worth of history snippets on projects near and far, so.
Great.
And the legislature is essentially done at this point.
Get them gone.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, we have some money that will be coming our way as a result of the Committee of Conference, and I briefed Tina and Peter in particular, because we will be coming back to us in the form of appropriations from the state after July 1, 7% of our retirement contributions budgeted for next fiscal year for Group 2, Police and Fire, the state is sending to us. So it will offset what we have budgeted for our Police and Fire Group 2 contributions for fiscal year 22-23 to the tune of 7%. One-time payment, which...
Does that imply that the fund is healthy?
No. It has nothing to do with the fund is healthy. The state's excess revenue generation to the tune of about $400 million. That word came out this morning. But no, this was a legislative effort because there are those who have argued that the state reduced, they used to pay 35% of the retirement contribution for Group 2. and teachers. And then they, they essentially weaned us off for a couple of years and then it went away altogether. This is really an attempt on their part to step potentially back into doing this on an ongoing basis, subject to future appropriations. And it'll come up again next year when the state does its budget, starting January of '23. But for now, we know for fiscal year '22-23, we're getting 7% of our Group 2 contribution costs in a check from the state. The state has also set aside more money for highway aid. Again, one-time monies. And I believe that they have a total of, I'm not sure I'm going to get this number right, 34 million in additional highway aid they're going to be allocating to all cities and towns. So we'll get some fairly small payment to boost what is our normal highway aid from the state of New Hampshire for fiscal year '22-23. So those monies will be flowing in at some point from the state, probably not until October would be my guess, once they finish their fiscal year and close out their books.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there any date obligation to spend that money by?
No, that's assumed to become revenue that flows into the town, and we could use it to offset our full contribution for Group 2. It's gonna be up to you all to decide when that money comes in, what to do about it. It could also just revert to fund balance. Yeah.
The road-related dollars, is there any deadline to spend it by?
No. Mm-mm. And I think, Bill, I calculated that maybe we're gonna get about $28,000. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it's enough to pave an extra road ultimately, or to reduce next year's expenditure offset next year's expenditure by that amount. And again, it's the state that these things sort of come out of the blue often as efforts in large bills to sweeten incentives for cities and towns. So they're one time, and I always wrestle with how valuable one time is, because yes, money's great, but if you can't count on it on an ongoing basis, it's not terribly helpful, except it potentially relieves the expenditure pain for one expenditure cycle.
Okay.
28,000, that was about the cost of the sidewalk on
Right,
Reservoir
on
Road,
Hemlock,
so
from Hemlock to the trail.
let's talk about
project.
sidewalks before paving those roads.
Right, and you could use it for sidewalk work, so it could be, you could use it to fund an extra project. We only found out about this last Friday. We knew it was being sort of negotiated within the committee of conference, but it was only last Friday when NHMA confirmed that these sums of money were coming. The state also made money available to police departments for body cams and dashboard cams for police cruisers, but we're not eligible because we already have them.
All right, select board reports.
Bike walk committee met this afternoon. Jenny, our chair, was here talking about the 25 mile per hour around town. Still working on updating the 2011 walk bike master plan. It's in draft form. They're doing like layout and working with Rob and Pete on that work, just basically an update of the work that was done 10 years ago. They had a bike rodeo last month. It was successful. And there's a big push to make sure that the design work that's done or being proposed, the planning work that's being proposed, as we look at College Street and Main Street and Lebanon Street and improvements, that it's engineered and designed by an engineer and not kind of approximated. There's a conversation about making sure they're engineered and traffic planners and engineered reviewed, so we know what we're getting, not approximately getting. So there was a discussion today on that. Tomorrow at 4, the Advisory Board of Assessors is meeting here to review abatement requests.
Your planning board is going to be meeting here tomorrow at 7:30. And if you're interested, the major item on our agenda is major site plan review, design review, renovation, and addition to the Hopkins Center. So those of you who are excited about all that, that's going to be the primary concern of our meeting tomorrow night.
I have nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Any other business to come before the meeting? Hearing none, there has been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A32A, C, and E.
Bill Garrity, yes.
Peter Christie.
Nancy Carter, yes.
Joanna Witchem, yes.
We are in non-public session. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Jenny. Next time.
Thanks, Jenny.
Should we stay here or go to your office?
Yeah, can we, if
You all finished?
we're not coming back in, so yeah, so if we could stay here to meet, that would be great.